Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 308 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is With Action Comes Clarity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Maria Forleo. Clarity comes from action, not thought. Before we jump into today's episode, if you haven't grabbed yourself a copy of our new book, The Positivity Tribe, please head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever else books are sold, and help us spread some positivity. I've only known our guest today for a few weeks, but I've really enjoyed getting to know him. Rylee Meek shares some really powerful things with us, not just for succeeding in business, but also so we can succeed in life. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Rylee, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, Chris, happy to be here, man.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
You better believe it. Let's do this.
The number one objective of our podcast is both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you yourself have either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Oh, man, I got more than one. You just want one?
We could start with one.
All right. Oh, man, I think the one of the key components to life is really that there's never really failure. There's only feedback. And it's what you do with that really makes it a true difference. And just one that pops into my mind, at the age of, I think I was 23, I had actually experienced a decent amount of success financially at this point in my life. And I had an opportunity to invest into a business expansion, opening up operations in Mexico. So I had invested a lot of money into this. I had leased out my condo here in the States. And I basically moved down to Mexico, and my wife was pregnant at the time, and we were going to build this thing. This is like, a ground floor kind of endeavor. And 5 months into it, things were going well, but 5 months into it, the government stepped in and said, "Nah, you guys got to get out of here." And they essentially kicked us out of the country. So I found myself on a flight back to the United States, pretty much broke. I mean, not completely, but I was wounded for sure. And not only did I have the realization that when I was flying back that I was broke, but I also had the realization that I was essentially homeless as well, because I had a 1-year lease on my condo. Somebody was living in it. And so my wife and I found ourselves literally sleeping on my sister's couch and looking for the next opportunity of what to do. And I've always, had the mentality that, like, with action comes clarity. And as confused as I was at the time and hurt financially, I knew, number one, I needed to provide for my wife and my soon-to-be daughter. And it was a time where it was like I had everything to lose and nothing to lose at the same time. And so that's when I had started actually what is now known as the social dynamic selling system, which was taking a leap of faith on a credit card. I remember I invested my marketing dollars into my first marketing campaign. I had $673 in my bank account, and I had a credit card. And I knew there's always a way out, but for me, it was kind of like a do or die situation. And I was able to, make a few sales through that process, reinvested into my company, into myself, and kept doing that. And lo and behold, within 6 months, we had done over 2.1 million in sales. From $673 in my bank account to 2 million within 6 months. So that was a pretty good turnaround for us.
So I just want to repeat that because I want to make sure that our listeners got that. So $673 in your bank account and a credit card. 6 months later, you said $2.1 million in sales?
2.1. Got it.
So I just wanted to reiterate that because I knew a little bit of your backstory. I did some research on you. But I think that the part that stands out to me is investing in yourself and then reinvesting in yourself. And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't fully understand, is once they get success, they then sit on their laurels a little bit. And I'm not in any way saying that you shouldn't celebrate victories and things, but I think what you said very specifically right after that 2.1 is you reinvested in yourself and your business. And that's what I assume one of the things that got you to the next level. But you said something that I wanted to just dive into for a second, because I've heard you say it a couple times, is with action comes clarity. Where did that come from? And was that something that you originated, or was that something that was shared through you or to you, or was it something that came about over time?
I think it probably came about over time. I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, and literally when I say small, it's like less than 1,000 people in this town. So there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity there. So I knew I had to go find something to do. That was just always my mentality. Like, things aren't just going to happen. The movie, if you build it, that they will come. Like, I never believed that at all, because you can have the greatest product in the world, the greatest service in the world, but if nobody knows about it, you're not helping anybody, right? You need to take action on those good products, those good services, to actually help and make an impact in this world. And that's always been my mentality. I was literally having this conversation with one of my best buddies the other day, and it was like, dude, you could drop me in a third world country, and I don't say this to boast or anything, but it's like, drop me in a third world country with shoes and a shirt, right? And I'm gonna figure out within a few months, I'm gonna find the influential people in that area and learn how I could help them, how I could assist them, and then ultimately how we could be in business together. And that's really what I've done over my career here is taking those actionable steps. And why I applaud so many people that do that. Even my assistant today is my assistant because he literally direct messaged me on LinkedIn. And I was like, man, I appreciate those guts that he didn't know me. Didn't know him from Adam. And he literally messaged me and just asked if I would be his mentor. And I was like, absolutely, bud. I mean, he came on over to my house, and we've hit it off ever since. And I think just for those that are thinking life is just going to happen and they are a byproduct of it, it's a terrible mentality to live in. And I would encourage people that you got to go get life and don't let life happen at you, but you make life happen within your life. And that comes with taking action.
You shared a bunch of really powerful stuff in that, and going to your story you shared about your assistant, I didn't know that. I think that's really cool. But something that I often talk about on the show, and everybody knows the idea and the concept of 6 degrees of separation. I think in today's day and age with technology, social media, where technology is continually moving in such a fast pace, I talk about all the time, you're 1 degree separated from that person. But you said something that I think people miss is, even though you're 1 degree separated, so your now assistant was 1 connection separated from you on LinkedIn. He found you, he knew how to connect with you, but he then had to go ahead and, to use your words, he had to take action. I think a lot of people focus on finding those people and where they could get them. But then for some reason, I don't know if it's fear or fear of the unknown, but they don't go ahead and take that action step. And the reality is, whether or not your assistant thought about it for a couple hours or a couple days is irrelevant, because at the end of that, he went ahead and took action. And at that time, there was only one of 2 choices. You were either going to respond in a positive fashion, or you were not going to respond in a positive fashion. And that's it. It's only a yes or a no, right. So I'm glad that you shared that. And there was a lot in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think fear paralyzes a lot of people. And as you just hit it on the head, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? And that's where we mentally go down in that downward spiral where, oh, he's not going to like me, or, it's like, who cares? What is literally the worst that can happen? And if we can get ourselves mentally to understand that it's not that bad, that allows us, because people are they're motivated by fear of loss or the opportunity to gain. And I think a lot of people think fear is the more motivating factor, but I think it's motivating in a wrong manner. And the opportunity to gain should always be our motivating factors as we live this life. I'm a firm believer we're always either progressing or we're regressing. And if we can focus on the opportunity of gain versus the fear of why we wouldn't do something, or even the fear of loss of, if our motivating factor is that I'm only doing this because I'm fearful that I'm going to miss out on something, I don't even think that's a great motivating factor. It should be more about you're excited to gain the knowledge, the wisdom, or the opportunity of what it is that you're actually seeking out versus just fearful of not having it.
I love that. Fear of loss or opportunity of gain. That's really powerful. So I wanted to ask you, Rylee, if you wouldn't mind just quickly telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do today.
Sure, man. Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up in South Dakota. I now reside in Minneapolis, Minnesota, during the summer months usually. And then we try to be down in Clearwater Beach, Florida, as much as we can in the winter months. But what I've been doing over the last decade is growing a seminar sales company called the Social Dynamic Selling System, in which we fill live events for clients now. I did this with my own companies. I've taken 7 different companies to 7 and a couple of them even 8 figures within the very first year of each of those. It's generated us over $100 million in sales, which has been, fantastic financially. It's allowed me to shift to more so consult clients on how to do this and companies on how to do this. So we identify who their true client avatar is, demographically, we hone in. And I think the big thing that we've done well is we've married the concept of marketing and sales. And we have continuity between the entire process so that the sales process is an easy flow, utilizing live events, specifically like dinner seminar events. And then also now, as you know, man, what we're doing with Steve Weatherford, and not just consulting, but actually coaching, is what my real passion is now, is to pour into other people and help them, develop the lifestyles and acquire those dreams and goals that they have for themselves.
I think it's really key that you touched on that last part, because I know so many successful people from different walks of life that go through that cycle of starting off and then being successful and then hopefully continuing to get to a higher level of success. But at some point, so many of them make that switch where now they want to give back. And I think you've done that, and I've known you only for a couple of weeks now, and I see that in the passion that you do things. And consulting is yes, obviously in some ways, but it's more than that. It's helping people get to the next level. And what I always talk about is success leaves clues. And on the flip side of that is failure leaves clues as well. And Jim Rohn has that famous quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. So I would definitely recommend to our listeners to check out some of Rylee's stuff, and we'll put in the show notes. But definitely you breathe it, you talk it, and you live it, the idea of helping others. And we have a hashtag we use is we rise by lifting others up. And I think that's something that you definitely do in so many ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. And that was, I think, that just to, piggyback off of that, I had that realization about 5-6 years ago. It's like financially things were great, but I had this desire for more, or this feeling of just unfulfillment within me. And, money isn't everything unless you don't have enough of it. Right. And then once you've got enough of it, then it's like, now what? And a lot of people, unfortunately, I've seen this, and I even did this initially in my career. It's like, it's almost self-sabotaging as entrepreneurs. It's like we acquire this amount of success, and then it's like we don't know what to do. And so we can do detrimental things that cause that to fall, so we can build it back up again, right? And thankfully, I've been able to do that with multiple companies. So I know it's not just the goal of to acquire money and then sit on the beach and sip cocktails and margaritas. Like, that's boring to me. I couldn't imagine doing something like that. It's like it's as entrepreneurs, it's the thrill of the hunt and the desire to build something. And as I mentioned before, if we're not progressing, we're regressing. And I feel like that is our calling till the day we die. And if we have that innate ability to desire more, whether it's for ourselves or pouring into people, that's the only way we're going to make a true impact on this world. And we can live the legacy we have right now to leave the legacy that we want to be remembered for.
I love that. Live the legacy now so you can leave it. And I think, to your point, obviously success means different things to different people. And I think it's about pouring into other people. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have some incredible people, not only in my basketball coaching career, but since then, that have really poured into me in so many different ways. And whenever I have the opportunity to do that to others, I enjoy doing it, because I know for a fact I wouldn't be here where I am today if it wasn't for so many other people that really helped me, when they didn't really need to. They took time out of their schedule, their family, their business, their time off. And I'm sure you've had some of those people as well. So before we jump into your book, I'm going to ask a selfish question for myself and for our listeners. But books are something that we value at No Quit Living, and the power within reading and also writing. So I wanted to ask you first, if there's anything that you're reading currently, or perhaps you've read something recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yes. Man, one of my favorite books is, it's an older one, but it's called The Science of Success. James Arthur Ray was the author of it. And he came out with a new version of it, I think, a while back. But that was one of the books that, at the age of 18, 19 years of age, that literally changed my life. It had a lot to do with the mindsets and the vision that we have for our lives, and just the God-given laws that are here in the world right now that we just aren't taking advantage of the law of cause and effect, like what's coming first. And if we can put those into use, we're able to literally create the lifestyle that we desire. And so I would definitely recommend that book for anybody. It's on Audible. I oftentimes will just throw it in and play it in the background, because I've probably listened and read it at least 15, 20 different times now over the last 10, 15 years.
I appreciate you recommending it. Now, going back to your book, you just released your second book. So first of all, if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners about your first book, and also please tell them about the book that you just released also.
Sure. Yeah, the first book was called The Food for Thought: How to Use Dinner Seminar Marketing to Grow Your Business in Ways You Never Thought Possible. So kind of a long title there. But the concept behind that is we teach people how to do these dinner seminars and events, but I know not everybody can afford to hire somebody like us. And I wanted it to be able, because remember, I came from $673. I wouldn't have been the guy that could pay somebody like myself now, but I had a burning desire for more. And I wrote this book for that exact purpose, is that if you read this book and take action, it's very tactical and tangible. You can literally have your own events up and going within 4 weeks. So there's a great book. It became an Amazon bestseller. And then through that process, my business partner now, Scott Thomas, and I, he's a brilliant dude as far as marketing goes. I was kind of on the sales side. We came together and had formed a partnership, and we thought, man, it would be great to create another book just about how to influence people, more about sales. So this book is called Intentional Influence, the Power of Persuasion using NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And we teach, again, very tactical, tangible things that we teach in here. And most people think it's a book about sales, but at the end of the day, we are all in sales. No matter what job you think you're in or career, you could be a stay-at-home dad, stay-at-home mom, you could be a guy that writes code all day. But at the end of the day, you are in sales. You just happen to do whatever it is that job is. Or if it's, raising kids, if you're a stay-at-home dad, a stay-at-home mom, you're selling your kids every single day on why they need to do their chores, on why they need to go to bed at 8 o'clock. That's sales. That is truly what sales is. And the root word, the Norwegian root of sales, means to serve. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people think sales is that 4-letter kind of, naughty word, right? And at the end of the day, it's not. There are a lot of shady people out there that, we can give us a bad taste. But at the end of the day, the core of to sell means to serve. And that's really why we wrote this book, was to make that clear. And that the power to persuade people, it isn't about manipulation, but it's being influential in situations that, for whatever reason, you stand out in the crowd and people want to do business with you versus doing business with somebody else.
I love that. And I've heard you say that a couple times over the last few weeks, is we are all in sales. And the example you gave about kids, it's so true. And I've heard people even say, if you have a 9-to-5 job and you're a single woman, you're trying to sell that guy or that girl to take you on a date. And then you're trying to sell him or her to take you on a second date. So I think it's so true. I'm trying
to sell my wife every night when we go to bed. Come on.
But the cool part that you took it and you dissected for a second is to serve. And I think there are so many people that are just after the sale, and even forget the shady people that just try to sell for just the commissions and things like that, but people that are fixated on just that sale, just selling, they become almost a pariah in the sense you're like, all right, I can see you coming from a mile away. But on the flip side, we all have had experiences with people, salespeople, that ask the questions, the open-ended questions. So for example, it's like, Rylee, why is it that you and your wife are looking for this new car or this new SUV? And what are you looking for? What's the type of price range you're in, 3 seats, 4 seats, and asking those questions. And then I think, is then you serve people in the sense of delivering what they're looking for, as opposed to you said to me, I'm looking for an SUV. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to get this, this sedan off the lot. So I know you said SUV, but this sedan's the way to go, Rylee. And I know you have 6 kids and dogs, but this sedan's really, and that's when you become salesy. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. To change lanes here for a second, if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Hire a coach sooner. I mean, without a doubt. The moment I invested financially, I surrounded myself with mentors, and I believe at an early age, at the age of 15, is I would have to drive 5 hours up to Minneapolis here to once a month. I would do this to take part in a Saturday event that I could be around other successful people, because I physically had to get myself out of my environment and take myself into a different environment. And I invested my time and energy into that. But then once I made a little bit of money and then the day that I hired a coach, man, my income and my lifestyle absolutely skyrocketed. And that was the biggest, if I could name one thing, that was the biggest change or the biggest alteration in my life. And that's really why I love to do what I do, what I'm doing now, or what we've transitioned into, is to be able to have that impact on other people's lives as well.
It's so ironic that you share that. I was just on somebody else's podcast, I believe a week ago, and that exact question and topic came up, and the way I answered it was, I said, so many successful people that I look up to and I see on social media in different places. I've gotten to know them and find out more about them. I find that so many of them, if not all of them, have had coaches at different points in their personal and professional life. And it really hit me. It goes back to what I said earlier, is success leaves clues. So for any of our listeners, if you want to get to that next level in your business or your personal life, think about hiring a coach. Think about those people that are ahead of you, that are at a level that you want to get to. And maybe if you can't hire a coach, or if you don't know how to hire a coach, maybe ask one of those people. So for example, if Rylee was in my company, he was the number one salesperson. If I didn't know where to go to hire a coach or get a mentor, then maybe the first place you go to is you go to Rylee and say, hey, Rylee, wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind, have you ever hired a coach, or have you ever had a mentor? And again, going back to what I said, is success leaves clues. So people that are there to the level you want to be, or the place in their life or profession, ask them, who do they spend time with? Who are the coaches that they've used? Who are the mentors that have helped them? And the flip side is, so many successful people that are at that level at some point had a mentor or multiple mentors or coaches. And typically those are the ones that want to help in return. Or if not, if they can't do it, they typically also have people that they can recommend as well.
Absolutely. Great advice, Chris. Absolutely.
And if I had the opportunity to grant you dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Wow. Dead or alive? I'm going to go with, I'll go Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn. One of my top 3 all-time favorite quotes. You are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So follow-up question, that is, when did you first get introduced to Jim Rohn? Was it something that you did on your own, or maybe through a mentor or coach? I'm curious.
Through a mentor or coach, actually. I was 15.
That's awesome.
Literally, I took a job. My first ever job was, as an employee, we'll call it, was to make pizzas at a gas station. And I worked one 8-hour shift. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever doing that again. Because I was making $5.15 an hour. And that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. It just so happened my family some parts of my family were involved with some network marketing companies. And obviously Jim Rohn was a big influencer in that industry. And I was introduced to him and some of would have been tapes at the time, listening to him and, just carrying around his little positive affirmation booklets and things like that. But yeah, he was, it was an introduction from a mentor for me to, learn more about Jim Rohn.
I love that. You just dated yourself and myself for our younger listeners. Like, Rylee was talking about tapes. I don't know what is a tape. I talked to people when I was coaching high school basketball a couple years ago. A couple of times I saw a CD and some of the kids would look at me like, "Oh, my parents said, we have a couple CDs laying around the house," and I'm just like, "Wow, things change so quickly."
Man. It's crazy. Oh man.
So changing lanes into now what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have of you, Rylee, is that you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Last meal, what do you pick?
Last meal that I'm ever going to eat. Sushi.
Favorite smell?
Bacon.
All-time favorite sport?
Football.
Do you have a favorite team?
Green Bay Packers.
Favorite movie?
I'm going to say Wolf of Wall Street. Not that I condone everything in it, but I just love, whenever I was in a sales funk, my wife would be like, "You need to just go watch Wolf of Wall Street and get jacked up again."
All-time favorite author?
I'll just go with James Arthur Ray again, just because that book was so impactful on me.
What's the favorite app you have and use on your phone?
Voxer.
What is your background picture on your phone?
My wife and daughter.
And do you have an all-time favorite book?
Intentional Influence, of course, the one that I just wrote.
There you go.
I just go back to The Science of Success. That's my go-to.
And I'm curious for this question, if you have an all-time favorite quote.
I had a quote that just rambled off of my when I was speaking at one time, and I didn't even realize it was a quote, but now it's been quoted. But it is, your customer's perception doesn't have to be your perception. It's not your reality, but it's your job to speak to it. Because perception is projection, right? So, this is where, especially now when we talk about the, Republican Democrat, it's like, may have the same realities in life, but it's your job to speak to their reality. And that's the only way you're going to be able to convince somebody to come along with you or to buy your services or something along those lines.
No, I like that. I think
long answer to that question.
No, and it's very true. And I think the example of Republican Democrat is in that way too. It's those people are trying to sell us every single day.
Ay. Good Lord.
So there's so much out there during this 2020. It's been a very challenging year. And I'm curious if there's anybody, one or two people that you follow on social media that really put out some positive and uplifting stuff that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
For sure, man. One of my, best buds now, Steve Weatherford. That's how I, even got in touch with him. And coming back to what we talked about earlier is being intentional and taking action. I literally direct messaged him because I loved what he was doing. Amazing family man. He's accomplished a lot, in his career, but amazing family man and puts priority and it's fun to follow him on social media as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then for our listeners who want to connect with you, follow you, and find out more about you and your books, what's the best way for them to do so?
They could go right to our website, socialdynamicselling.com. socialdynamicselling.com. I'm on Instagram as well. It's the Rylee Meek. And Rylee spelled a little differently, Rylee and then MEEK. And yeah, you can hit us up there. And with this book out, man, I would love to make it as an offer to your audience, if that's all right.
That'd be awesome.
Download it. Let's do this. So if they do, we'll do a link up by the time this airs. We'll go socialdynamicselling.com/no quit living. And then we'll have a PDF download of that booklet completely free.
That's awesome.
No gimmicks of free plus shipping or anything like that. We'll email it directly to you. If you want a hard copy, you'll have to get it on Amazon.
I love it. And I love how you said no free gimmicks, because so many people have come on and offer. It's like, oh, free for you. And I'm like, oh, great. It's like all you have to do is cover the shipping and the mailing and the cost of the book. But minus that, it's completely free.
Right. Only $12.
And I'm always like, wait a second, that's not free then. And then last question we have for you, Rylee, same question we ask everybody, is if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yeah, for sure. I applaud anybody that's taken the time to even listen to this long, right? That there's so many people that will start things and then they never finish them. And so if there's anything that I would, suggest or implore people to do is just take action on whatever it is that you've got in that desire that you haven't done yet, right? It can be this little list of things. It doesn't have to be something dramatic or crazy. Right. And if your goal is to have a better relationship with your spouse, just do one little thing today. And that could be, as men, one of my original mentors, it was like, dude, just start making an effort to put down the toilet seat. And it was like, that has been ingrained with me ever since. And that's just, one little thing that my wife appreciates. Or putting the cap on the toothpaste. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but just one little thing. If it's starting that next business, go set up a business bank account. Right? Set up your LLC. It takes 4 minutes to do it. You can do it online. Take that next step, because with action, things will start to become clear. And I'll end on that, Chris.
I love it. No, and for our listeners, obviously they know I talk all the time about action. So Rylee, I truly, truly appreciate what you shared with us. And for our listeners, it's not a free plus shipping, plus the book, plus the cost of the paper. It's free. So if you do not take advantage of it, you are not listening to what Rylee said, which is taking action. So I appreciate you, my man, and I know that you and I will connect again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to episode number 308. I had a lot of fun recording today's episode, and I'm really appreciative of Rylee for taking some time to be with us today. If you are not progressing, you are regressing. I love that. And unfortunately in life, I think too many of us at one point or another become complacent. In his parting words, Rylee said something that really stood out to me. So many people start things, but never finish them. So I challenge you right now to take a couple minutes and think about those things that you have started, but you have yet to finish. And ask yourself, why not? And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.